أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وعنده مفاتح الغيب لا يعلمها إلا هو ويعلم ما في البر والبحر وما تسقط من ورقة إلا يعلمها ولا حبة في ظلمات الأرض ولا رطب ولا يابس إلا في كتاب مبين. First, I hope everyone is staying safe, and I hope everyone is keeping with all of the health guidelines, both that are dictated statewide and nationwide. And let me say in the beginning that this is unfortunately a serious crisis, and it is not something to be taken lightly. We have not experienced anything like this in our lifetimes, and we most likely will not experience anything like this in our lifetimes. So if there was any doubt that this is a serious matter, now is the time to understand and to take it seriously. There are guidelines that are coming out from the governor's office almost every few hours, also from the Maryland State Health website, also nationally from the World Health Organization and the CDC. So people need to take these things seriously. As far as ICCP is concerned, we have taken this seriously, and of course we have shuttered the mosque for daily prayers and for the Jummah prayers. And in lieu of the Jummah prayers, we're going to have these live streamed Friday talks, after which, of course, you would just normally pray your Dhuhr prayer, 4 rakahs. And it seems extreme, but these are extreme times, and alhamdulillah, Allah Ta'ala has given us the flexibility in our Sharia, and the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has given us the flexibility in his Sunnah that we can acclimate and adapt to really any situation. Allah Ta'ala tells us in the Quran, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. If my servant asks about me, indeed I am near. Allah Ta'ala does not live in the mosque, that we must come to the mosque to be able to access him, but Allah Ta'ala hears. We are closer to him or her than their own jugular vein. So now is a time that we need to dig in within our souls, within our hearts, to reconnect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in light with that message, there could be no appropriate time than now to do that, because this weekend we will be commemorating the event of the Isra and the Ma'raj. It is an event that we commemorate typically on the eve of the 27th of Rajab, which is upon us, even though there are differences of opinions of the ulama when exactly the Isra and the Ma'raj took place, but typically the Ummah historically has commemorated it during the 27th of Rajab. And the reason, you couldn't even script this if you wanted to. The reason this is so timely for us is that the Isra and the Ma'raj took place at the lowest point in the Prophet's life, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He had just lost his wife, he had just lost his uncle, he had been kicked out of Mecca by his own people. The Muslims were ostracized, they were starving, they were thirsty, they did not have access to water, they did not have access to food, they did not have access to trade. No one from Mecca would barter with them. They were quarantined by force, without supplies. And many of the ulama of the seerah actually say that the reason that Sayyidah Khadija alayhi salam died after that was because of the hardship of that boycott against the Muslims. So when the Prophet ﷺ had lost his life companion, the mother of his children, the one who had supported the da'wah in the beginning, the only one to believe, there was at one point in time in which there was nobody that believed in the message of the Prophet ﷺ except Sayyidah Khadija alayhi salam, that one person whom gave him comfort, who gave him solace, who supported him, who raised his children. He had lost her, and his political protection had been breached. And it was at this lowest point in the Prophet's life, at a time when most of us would despair, at a time when most of us would give up, at a time when most of us would feel overwhelmed by the tragedy, overwhelmed by the inconvenience. The Prophet ﷺ was given this enormous gift, was given this enormous miracle, this miracle of the Isra and the Ma'raj. All of the Anbiya there is a miracle. There are two types of miracles with the prophets. There is the miracle of the message itself, mu'jizat al-risala. And of course, for us, the mu'jiza of the message of the Prophet ﷺ is the Quran that lasts with us. And then there is the mu'jizat al-rusul. There is the miracle that belongs to the prophets themselves. This was one of those moments in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed on the Prophet ﷺ a miracle unmatched in human history. For the Prophet ﷺ to journey at night to Jerusalem, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's protection remain in the city of Jerusalem and our brothers and sisters that are in Jerusalem, to pray with the Anbiya, to meet with the Anbiya, to ascend the seven levels of the heaven, to discourse with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without barrier. All of the main themes and the main parts of the story of the Isra and Ma'raj, so full of theological lessons, so full of hadith lessons, so full of really almost every aspect of Islam can be teased out of that one episode. But this year, when I think about the Isra and Ma'raj, I think about it a little bit differently. Of course, we honor the aspects of the story as the Prophet ﷺ was honored. We celebrate that when we commit with an essential aspect of our belief system that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can mold and can manipulate the dimensions as He sees fits. So the Prophet ﷺ did all of this but returns and his bed is still warm. Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. It reminds us the relativity of time, the fragility of life, that Allah ta'ala is the creator of these dimensions, etc. But more importantly, this year more than ever, the thing that I think of the most of the Isra and the Ma'raj is that the one thing that the Prophet ﷺ was given during the Isra and Ma'raj that we all partake in every day are the daily prayers. Of course, from the beginning of Islam until that time, there was prayer. The Prophet ﷺ said, "La khayra fi din la salata fi." There is no good in a prayer that has no religion. There is no good in religion, rather, that has no prayer. So Islam, as a religion, had some type of salah. But most likely it was 2 rak'ahs, 2 rak'ahs, 2 rak'ahs. The 5 daily prayers, the way we conduct them today, the Fajr being 2 rak'ahs, the Dhuhr and Asr being 4 rak'ahs each, Maghrib being 3 rak'ahs, Isha being 4 rak'ahs, this came from the Isra and the Ma'raj. And not just that the prayer itself came from the Isra and Ma'raj, but that which we say in the tahiyyat at the end of the prayer before we exit the prayer. Tahiyyatu lillahi wa salawatu tayyibat, assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabi wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, etc. until the end. This is the actual discourse that took place between the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam and the angels as he discoursed with them and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the night prayer. I think of that because at the lowest time in the Prophet's life, at the time, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, at the time of maximum desperation, at the time where anybody, as I said, would give up, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was given a tool to help him overcome that difficulty. And that tool was the prayer. Usually in the Isra and Ma'raj, I like to remind myself and those around me that it is a time that we reconnect with our prayer. It is a time for us to take the prayer seriously. This is something that we have in front of us every day, but now more than ever, when we are quarantined, when our movement is limited, when we have a great deal of uncertainty, economic uncertainty, health uncertainty, we have no idea how long this will last. Most likely it will last longer than we think. We have no way to measure the potential damage of this pandemic and this crisis. But the one thing that we have, that we always have, is we can turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some people, they might say, oh, this is a defeatist way of thinking. This is the problem with religion. This is a last resort. Even in the English language, when we do something out of desperation, we call it a Hail Mary. Right? In sports, when you're at the there's no options left. The quarterback is just going to throw up the ball and just hope for the best. We call that a Hail Mary. But that is not the way of Islam. This is not a Hail Mary. The prayer is much more active than that. The prayer is much more real than that. The prayer is the beginning and the end. And in it contains everything that we can need because it reminds us, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-azim. There is no power or agency except that by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah ta'ala does not tell us to pray and just kick back and do nothing. But rather we pray 5 times a day, spread out through the day to remind ourselves that the real actor, that the real power, that the real ability is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look at in 1 week, in simply 7 days, how our life has been upended. If this is not clear to us, that only Allah ta'ala is able, that only Allah ta'ala is acting, then nothing will get through to us. If we cannot see this very clearly staring us in the face, that this is something that was natural, that this is not some type of biochemical or bioweapon, this was not a state acting, this was so totally qadar. And then there was no way to stop the spread the way it has been spreading up until now, or to stem the death toll until we take extreme measures. This is a reminder of our own poverty. This is a reminder of our own inability vis-a-vis the ability of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the prayer for us reconnects us to that. It does not mean that we just give up. It does not mean that we have lost all hope, but rather all our hope is regained when we stand and we face Mecca and we make our prayer, when we are in sujood, we are closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We know and we feel that Allah ta'ala is there with us, that Allah ta'ala will answer our prayers. The Prophet ﷺ said that Allah becomes angry with the servant that does not ask. Asking, dua. The Prophet ﷺ said that dua, mukhul ibadah, that the dua is the head of all of our acts of worship. In another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, dua huwa al-ibadah, that acting, asking, supplication itself is all of the acts of worship are a form of asking. It is a form of acknowledging our inefficiency, our disability, our inability, our ineptitude, our weakness vis-a-vis that of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when we feel the most in need, when we feel that we are at our last level or last portion of sanity, and then the prayer times come in and we wash and we stand and we pray, we remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not left this world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not distant that we must yell, but Allah ta'ala is near. Allah ta'ala is in control. Allah ta'ala is allowing us to be. Allah ta'ala has given this crisis as a test for us, لِيَبَلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا, to test us to see who amongst us will pass this test. And I want every one of us to remember that this is an opportunity. Everything that we are going through, despite the damage that will take place, despite the uncertainty, this is a great opportunity for us to emerge from this time period better than we were before, stronger in our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, more confident, more grounded, more patient, more grateful for everything that we have. Just being able to step outside and smell the fresh breeze as spring, now that we are in spring, from a season point, just even being able to do that is a blessing. Knowing that you yourself are not sick, that you and your children and your family are safe is a blessing. Knowing that you have a mosque that is trying to connect despite the difficulties is a blessing. There are people that don't have this blessing. So alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. The Prophet ﷺ said, strange is the affair of the believer. عَجِبَ لِأَمْرِ الْمُؤْمِنِ فَإِنَّ أَمْرُهُ كُلُّهُ خَيْرٌ. Strange is the affair of the believer because in all of it is good. Either they are patient or they are grateful. This is the time for us to remind ourselves of these messages, these lessons, but to act from. It is a time for us to take the prayer seriously. Most of us now, we actually have more time, more free time than we had before. We are at home, we are stuck. We might be emotionally concerned, but that emotional concern might be taking up the space. But when you think about it, we have time. We have time to make wudu. We have time to say our prayers. You can spend an extra few minutes with your prayer, extra few minutes making dua, to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to alleviate the suffering for us, everybody around us. So the Isra and the Mi'raj reminds us of the importance of our prayer. It is the axis around which revolves our spiritual and liturgical life in Islam. Most of the ulama argue that the person that does not pray is a person that does not believe. That our belief and our affiliation with Islam is based on our ability and our act of prayer. Let this be a recommitment to the prayer. Let us understand that this prayer is our key to our relationship with our Creator. Let us understand that this prayer, at its core, is a form of asking, is a form of supplication to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in our prayers, let us collectively ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us safe, keep us healthy, that we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect our families and our children and our masjid, and that most importantly, Let us ask, and this might seem strange for people, but let us ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestow wisdom on those who are in a position of authority, who are literally every 12 hours making decisions that impact our life almost instantaneously. You wake up in the morning and the governor passes a new law. By the afternoon, you have to comply. We ask that Allah ta'ala bless those in authority with wisdom, that they make the right decision, that they do not put their own political expediency and their own political gain ahead of the well-being of the community. At the end of the day, in whatever system of government we live in, whether we are in the United States or as a minority or whether we're in a Muslim majority country, at the end of the day, those that make decisions, those decisions affect us, impact us. So we ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them wisdom in making the right decision. We ask Allah ta'ala to make this instance and this crisis pass with the same speed that it came in. Most importantly, please stay connected with ICCP, whether it be through the YouTube channel, whether it be through the weekly emails. We are doing everything that we can, inshallah, to stay connected with you. We will increase our connectivity as the days and as the weeks progress. We are not going to leave the community. Both myself and Tarek, we are committed to do everything that we can to stay connected with you. So please understand that there is a little bit of a technology hurdle that inshallah we will surpass very soon in order to stay connected. Please stay safe. May Allah Ta'ala continue to bless us, to bless your community, to bless your families, to protect your children, to protect our parents. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.